Hi. Hi, Paru.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Aditi.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Oh, you're sitting in your studio. I see all your supplies well organized.
You can see yeah, all the mess behind. When I put on the camera, I realized, but
No,
it's
no.
okay.
It's okay. It's okay. It's a working
It
space.
creates the vibe and the atmosphere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you joined up. It's been a long
Yes, I'm very
time.
glad I joined. Yeah.
Okay. So this month, like I said, we are going to uh, explore stuff in nature. So there's a little bit of pencil sketching and a little bit of watercolor. So this is just, we're moving from last month module, which was pencil sketching, to uh, from sketching how we add color to our illustrations. So the intent again is for you to be able to find a lot of different topics to illustrate and then also use that for all sorts of things that you would want to make for yourselves. It could be journaling, it could be maybe cards, it could just be labeling, it could be anything, or just make small pictures of these that you could put up in your homes. So often when we think about paintings or putting up paintings, we only think of large format paintings that you want to frame and put up. But there's different ways in which you can enjoy display art without it having to be like a formal frame every time. Plus, with a frame also, then you have to have space, or then you have to replace. So you want to, there are, through this one topic, we will see how many different ways you can even display this art. So today's topic, trees, you can make lots of different tree types on a particular sized paper and literally just tape it. Use paper tape, some or even a washi tape, which is not going to damage your paint too much. We get lots of nice tapes that have temporary glue on them, with which you can create a display. Now, the reason I am asking you to do that display is because the more you observe your own artwork, the more you can start seeing things in it that you would want to change. Uh, that doesn't mean that what you've done is wrong or bad. It just means that your observation starts becoming more towards a more advanced level. So, for example, if you've made a particular tree and it's in the book, you don't see it again till you open the book. But if you make that and you keep it in a space in your home where you're passing by, every time you look at it, you start seeing things differently. You start seeing color, contrast, you start seeing shapes. And then with every successive project you do, you start getting a more advanced understanding of certain things regarding composition or lines. One second. Huh? So that kind of learning, part of it happens if you do a repeated artwork, but a large part of it also happens through just mental work. Because while you may, with your hand, develop a skill to draw, what to draw and where to draw it comes from a mental activity. It's not always just drawing on paper. And that happens very subliminally. You may not even have to stand in front of your picture and say, okay, now I'm going to analyze. You don't need to do that. It's just something that you absorb in passing. So this is like when there is a subject of your choice that you enjoy or you do a lot of, when you see somebody else's work, there is a certain amount of critique that you'll end up doing. Like, for example, if you are if you're doing knitting or crochet or something like that, at least it happens to me, or even gardening, when you see somebody else's composition, you will have an opinion that you might say, okay, maybe I want to do it this way, maybe I want to do it that way. So that comes from knowing a subject well. But when you don't know it, when you're beginning to learn, there's even more information that you need to slot in places. So instead of judgment, it becomes more like, what if I tried something like that? How would that look? So that is the kind of observation that you can build up, and it can happen. That habit is good to have because not just your own work, even if you see stuff at a restaurant, for example, you see a clump of trees, after we've done today's exercise, you'll start noticing it differently. And you must engage in that exercise constantly, not to criticize as much as to probably learn from, or to just exercise your options that, okay, what if I tried something that is in this shape or that shape? And then also you add into your visual bank. So the trees that I have shared today with you, it's a whole group of different types of trees. Let me just share the image with you. So we have this a very old oak tree where not much of the canopy is visible. This is just a very dramatic trunk. And this is a very large tree. As you can see by scale, the human is very tiny here. So this tree gives us an opportunity to focus on structure of a trunk. Likewise, even this tree, because it's so huge, this helps us in understanding how to draw the lines to show texture, to show age, and often the identity of the tree. And then you have different types of trees. So each tree or kind of tree has its own unique structure. We are all very familiar with banyan trees because we see them very frequently all over the place. Its unique structure is involves these aerial roots. Then we have mango trees, which have their own composition, their own proportion of trunk versus shape of the tree, shape of the canopy, shape of leaves, and how it looks. So, for all of us, if I show you this and I show you this, you will instantly know what these trees are by just these features. You don't have to go close to it, you don't have to examine it. This is just because we are familiar with the unique characteristics of the tree. But if it's unfamiliar, if I show you a tree like this, which is not from our region, chances are we don't know the name, or we might get even confused amongst the 4 or 5 names we do know. Or something like this, or something like this. This could still, you might say that this reminds you of maybe a rain tree, or maybe semi-tropical trees. And this definitely brings to mind another region altogether. So, like with human beings, we have distinctive features which we recognize to a very, very acute degree. With trees, we have a broad shape that we need to capture. And then, of course, very familiar, a palm tree like this. And there's another palm like this, which is called the traveler's palm. So each of these have their unique characteristics, and each of them can help us learn how to appreciate trees. Now, before we begin, I want you to draw a very small tree. The as you would normally draw a tree. And the reason, of course, I'm giving you this exercise is so that I can draw out the differences between what you would draw normally. And then once I show you how to draw the tree, you may find some similarities, or you might find stark differences. But if I just show you the tree directly, how to draw it, you might not, it might not embed, the information may not embed as effectively as if we compare the two. So in a small space, let me demonstrate. So just in a tiny space like this, leave about an inch of space from all sides. Don't make it too much in the corner, but somewhere over here, a little inside what we would call the field of vision. Make a small tree about this size as you would normally make a tree. So I'm going to make a tree like is made in a rush, or how I see normally people would make trees. So there's often a tree that is made like this. Sometimes also trees are made like that. So if you're trying to make, oh, just 1 second. So the difference between a tree that we draw like this and a more realistic tree is the structure. So normally, I just want you to observe this. Don't draw with me. Just observe how I am trying to make this. Normally, a tree grows in such a way that each of its leaves gets ample sunlight, right? So, and also it more often than not, a tree is wider at the base and then tapers to the top. And each branch is wider at its source and tapers at its terminus. So, with that in mind, we can start off with a tree that is firstly no parallel lines. There are hardly any parallel lines in nature. And then from here, you can break it up into branches like this, where the source of the branch is usually wider, and these lines come closer to each other to a certain extent, not too close, because then you don't want to make like a point. And then from here again, you can continue to branch out. And then, of course, more. So just making branches in such a way that they don't go and clash with the existing branch. And they usually create a Y between them. So we want to make branches which are diverging constantly and not going into each other. Now, from this stage forward, everything starts becoming about making space. It's like if you can imagine each of these branches trying to say, look at me, or that they are trying to get attention from the sun. So what we want to avoid is too many lines in the same angle. Just change the angle a little bit and do not make three-pronged branches. So this is one. You can make another branch here, change the angle. You can branch out from here again if you want to. So what you want to avoid is branches that come out like this. You don't want a three-pronged branch. One second, I think there's insufficient light here. Okay, we don't want this. We don't want parallel lines for branches. That looks very artificial. And we don't like branches which have repeated angles. immediately one after the other. That looks very artificial also. So avoid, these are all the things to avoid. So avoid tridents. Parallel. And repeats. Another thing to avoid also is when you're making a branch. So suppose you have made one branch like this. And then you want to make another branch to this. You make it in with a straight line. And then you continue that same parallel line with a broken line like that. So it's parallel lines are a no, and broken lines just make it look like something's floating. Which also you want to avoid. So the structuring of a tree, usually, even if you're just drawing it like a sample, it needs to be carefully thought out. And of course, like what I've done over here, avoid these pinches. So when you come to a branch, you make this like a two-pronged thing, and then this. Avoid these pinches, sorry. What you can do is, say if it comes to a point where a pinch is inevitable, you can make an extra V shape like this. So let me just magnify this. If this is how your branches are going and they have to taper at some point, you can taper them, and this can go ahead and become its own branching. But you can taper it like that, a little more elegantly. And the base of the tree, you should always let it expand into the ground. So avoid ending the tree with a horizontal line. So there's multiple ways in which we can make the base of the tree. You can end it with some grasses like this, or also some pebbles to make it look more natural. And also often a root structure like that. Now, once this is done, we can create some kind of basic texture for the tree by making, if it is a banyan tree, it will have these horizontal lines, just a few texture lines like that between roots. Many trees have this. Oh, sorry. So these lines, which are just for texture, can bring a certain amount of realism. Once our branching is done, we can create a canopy. For something like this, we can just make, now the canopy can't be too tall. So part of these branches are going to be hidden. So for the canopy, you can make a line that is a little scratchy, but not like this. Don't make it like this. So just let your hold your pencil really far away and let it just move about in such a way that you don't make any part of the line the same as the one before. And between these branches, so you have a canopy from the top, and then you have some bits of the canopy from the bottom. And that should be good enough. So many of these branches, you can show them holding up the canopy. And sometimes you can also cover these up with green. Now, usually for trees or anything in nature, we have a source of light. So say, for example, we have a source of light from this direction. Everything on the left side and the bottom is going to be slightly darker. So imagine parts of the canopy on the left, which will just have a few dark patches. But they won't be uniform. And the left side of the trunk will also have certain shadows, but you don't have to draw them. Just a little bit. And even if you draw like a scratchy texture from the bottom and a little bit of the left, and play around with this pencil texture like this, you will start getting some dimension. Okay, everyone comfortable with this? Any questions so far? All right, now let's come to coloring. I want you to try and use whatever you would instinctively use to color the first tree. And based on that, I'm going to show you how to color this tree. So not based on it, but just another way. So let's take 5 minutes and just color these trees on top. Whichever color you like. Once you decided on your colors and painted the tree, make a color swatch of the shades you've chosen. I am choosing this is sap green, this is emerald green, and burnt umber. Okay, are you all done? Now for this tree, again, I want you to just observe. We are going to start off by firstly rejecting all the greens and the browns that we have in our palette. So we are going to use only these following colors. That's lemon yellow, gamboge, yellow ochre, orange, scarlet, cobalt blue, and cerulean blue. Okay, so the exact opposite color palette. So I just want you to observe how this looks, and we'll speak about it once you have done it also. So just,
Aditi,
yeah,
you started with lemon yellow, gamboge. What was the next one?
yellow ochre.
Which one is that? You just show me on the palette.
Yeah,
This one, right? Okay, okay. Then which is the one between the black and the white? What color is that?
that is raw umber.
That's wrong. Okay. And after the ochre was orange, right? No,
Orange, yeah, yeah,
this one, the one next to the gamboge.
correct.
And the next is scarlet, cobalt, and
Yeah,
cobalt is the lightest of the blues. No.
this one. This one is
Oh.
cobalt.
Okay.
And this is, so on the free end, the lightest, brightest one is cerulean.
Okay. And the middle one is
Ultramarine.
ultramarine.
Do you have the sheet, that
No,
comes-
I've lost the sheet. That's why I'm having trouble.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, I know you had said to keep the sheet, but this particular box, I don't know where the sheet has gone.
It's okay. You'll learn as we go along.
So,
All right. So again,
yeah.
I want you to observe the application. So normally when we paint like, and that's expected and accepted, where you will apply the paint and then evenly spread it across the area that you want colored. But in this case, now I want you to see how you should wet your colors and then let your brush glide over the paper very, what's the word? It's a very staccato manner. So it doesn't smoothly flow, it jumps around. It jumps around between colors and between shapes also. So this is how I'm going to go about it. I'm going to start applying some paint very loosely. And this is a mix of colors. So there's a little bit of yellow, lemon yellow, a little bit of gamboge. I'm leaving some gaps in between. Don't paint. I want you to first observe how my brush is moving. And a little bit of yellow ochre. Don't paint. Please observe. Then half of it is unpainted, and I'm going to start adding a little bit of cobalt blue here. And in the places where we have it slightly darker, it will come more heavily. I'll apply there first and spread it around in the other places. So here I have a little bit of cerulean. I'm spreading it, but I'm not spreading it like this. I'm not doing this because that will flatten your paint a lot. And this just leaves the paint in clumps to do whatever the pigment wants to do. Hold your brush a little far away and also apply it with a few places where you will make just a splatter-like effect. So I will do just a few dots here and there. And as you can see, the darker colors I'm trying to consciously apply towards the bottom and the left. Now, while the paint is still wet, I'm taking a little bit of orange. And please use the palette so you make sure that you just have adequate pigment and not too much. And using that, I'm going to mix these colors as to create this flow. and also a little bit of scarlet. And a little bit of yellow ochre. And I'm going to leave a few patches unpainted. And then also a little bit of cobalt again towards one side. And then maybe a little bit of yellow and cobalt again to create the shadow and the ground. So I have mixed the paint on the paper itself by mixing it wet on wet. And this is just one layer. So we can keep making layer upon layer to add more dimension. I want you to see how we can create a certain tree effect by not using the obvious shades that we would associate with a tree. Okay, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah.
So just so you know, the brush I've used is a number 6 brush, and I have used a rag, 2 in fact, to make sure that I have only enough water and pigment to paint a small section at a time. Don't use a very large brush, that will overload it. Don't use a very tiny brush because you won't have adequate medium that will stay wet, because we need to do a lot of wet on wet work. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Next one. Now, when you're painting this, since it is wet on wet, I want you to keep an eye on how wet you make your paper, huh? Don't make it too wet, because if you land up making a puddle on your paper, then no pigment will settle on the base. It all just floats around and you'll land up with a whole lot of clouds as your first layer. So the difference, or I would say the right amount of pigment or medium for a wet on wet would be when you wet the paper. It's just a sheen, and it does not look as if there is a, if you tilt the paper up, that this water is going to flow out. It just needs to be enough to create a sheen. Okay. If there is excess, then dab your brush on a paper or a tissue or your rag and remove this excess. Remove meaning remove it from your brush and then spread this around. It can't be too much. How is it going?
It's
Okay.
going.
Going? Okay. Let's have a look. Okay. All right. Yeah, nice. Not bad. Yeah. So the canopy is a little lopsided. You can add
Mine is a
paint.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Add a little more paint on the right, maybe.
Add a little more to the side.
Yeah.
On the right.
Yeah. Let me check Amulya's. Okay. Colors are looking nice. Application is very nice. I like that dark edge that you've made. So when you are applying this now, Amulya, a few places allow the brush to just go a little off the line, because sometimes in trees you'll see that the edge is not a smooth edge, so you want to just avoid that smooth edge. So a little bit of a scraggly edge works. And in terms of painting, you can do this. I'll just show you. So I'm doing a second layer. Just a few.
Looks better.
One minute. Huh? Let's see, Parus. Yeah, slightly better. Yeah, good, much better. Okay, so Amulya, what I was saying was that when you're adding color to the sides, this is what you can do. Just a few edges that are unfinished, like this.
So this you've mixed which colors for this?
This I started off with a little bit of lemon yellow, and then in the same brush without really mixing. So this is what I've done. Lemon yellow over here, cobalt blue over here. And I take the color from in between that space. So sometimes I get a little extra cobalt blue, sometimes a little lemon yellow. So you want to make a few unpredictable patches like this to keep it more realistic. All right, so if you're done with this now let's try drawing the other trees. So I want you to try to make at least 4, if not 6 trees in this space. We can make just 4 is also fine. So the size of the tree is just about so much, not too big, because right now we're just studying the silhouette of the tree. So let's say take the first tree, which is just the trunk of an old elm. And this one we'll do in pencil. So it just has to be so much. If you look at the tree, you have to budget only a certain amount of space for all of this, not too large. So your shapes itself start off pretty tiny. The first side, if this is the size, this is how you will make. Just copy the lines as you see them. The angles and the distance. That's all. That will give us the proportion. And in proportion, what are the rest of the angles looking like? Now here you'll notice that there is a joint in the tree and there's some snow over here. So the snow part is really pretty to sketch because you basically just have to leave the paper unsketched. The edge of the snow also sometimes is softer. So basically, you can just move your pencil in the line of this silhouette. So it's almost like a contour that you're following.
You can't see your drawing actually.
I know I'm trying to focus. I don't know why it's not focusing. A little better, hopefully. Focuses on my hand. So I'm making these lines, which are in the same shape as the plant, as a trunk. And then just because we have it, I'm going to put a little bit of snow towards the bottom. The only differentiator between this branch in the foreground and the rest of the trunk in the background is the lines or the direction of the shading. This looks like a remnant of the earlier branch. So sometimes one tends to think a lot when you are sketching. And that can help, but sometimes more often than not, it gets in the way because we see pictures, we see the world differently with our eyes as opposed to with our brain. Our brain is constantly trying to analyze, and in its analysis, it will end up giving us only relevant information for our survival. And that part may not really be accurate as far as its artistic information is concerned. So, for example, when the brain is looking at this tree, all it's looking at is this a tree that you are connected to in some way, or that is going to give you fruit, or this is some memory from your childhood, or some kind of trauma, or whether it is danger. That is what it is trying to analyze. But when we are drawing ourselves, we are looking at something completely different, which the brain doesn't even know we want to look at. So avoid analyzing too much in the beginning. In the end, later on, it will help, but not so much in the beginning. Why is a branch looking the way it is looking? All that, just forget about it. Just draw it as you see it. So then the angles that you have, that you can see, draw those. The texture, just draw it as you see it. Trees have often been a very favored topic amongst sketch artists because there's so much texture in them that they'll end up giving us a lot of drama. Now, while the rest of the trunk is all very scraggly, there are some places where you have a circular thing that's called a burl, and some places you have almost cracks in the bark. Now, branching in trees also you'll notice is like the branching of our fingers. They don't attach at 2 points as much as there is some kind of membrane through. So anytime you're showing a branch or at least the Y of a tree, if this is the edge, instead of having the lines come and join at one point, show them as if they're merging. So make it almost seem like there's a fold. That makes it look a lot more original and authentic. Oh. So you'll notice in a lot of places over here, there is the branch that goes behind and part of the new branch from the front. Here, of course, it is attached in this manner. And modulate your pencil line. Don't make everything the same darkness. Are you getting it?
Sketching is not my strength. I'm finding it difficult to create the texture.
Just let your pencil move back and forth very lightly.
Yeah.
Don't make it too dark. So that's the thing. That's why last month I made it compulsory for everyone to do sketching. I mean, I just did pencil sketching all of last month
Mm.
because actually, let me ask the rest of the group who did the pencil sketching. Do you find it easier now to do this after our last month of pencil sketching? Or did you think it was worthwhile?
Yeah.
No, it did make a difference, Aditi, but still, at least for me, it's a long way. But yeah, I'm getting there slowly.
So, yeah, as
At
long
least,
as
to able to see the picture differently now, at least, yeah. But the shapes and all are still little haywire for me, at least. But
Hmm. How about the others? Any comments on our pencil sketching last month?
No, I do see a difference in the way I see things, and the shapes I'm making, they're getting better. I've made a lot of household items, whatever I see, clips, pens, whatever, jar. So yeah,
Right.
I can personally see a difference.
Wonderful. Yeah, good. That was the intention, really. So the skill arrives very slowly. It's like that ghazal, na? I love that ghazal. Have you heard this? Sarakti Jai. The first line of that is beautiful. Jawa hote, what was it? Haya yaklakt ai or shabab ahista. So what it's trying to say is that the beautiful girl, she learned to hide herself first, but her beauty emerged slowly. It's like that. So the skill comes much slower than you would like. Now, in this also, you will notice that some of the dimensions of the tree are visible because of shadows, like not dimensions, some aspects, like the branch over here becomes more visible after you make that light shadow at the bottom. And then there are some more gentle shadows of the branches above the tree that we do not see. Then there's a little bit of a deeper shadow just underneath this branch or the origin of this branch. So these are things that you will start noticing and start making.
And also the base of the snow, right? Wherever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise in the black and white, the white is not visible unless there's a shadow.
True. But if you don't see the shadow distinctly, you don't necessarily need to make it. So
But the bark is anyway darker, that's why the white is brighter.
correct.
Right? I mean, at least that's how I'm perceiving it.
Correct. So for the shadow in the snow, I would actually avoid making it because there are too many other there's I think acorns or something that have fallen on the floor. So you're not getting a
No, I'm not meaning there. I'm saying like on the actual tree,
yeah.
the snow is visible because the bark next to the snow is
Correct.
darker.
You're right. You're right.
Right? Otherwise, Otherwise, in a black, like it's easier if it's color. You can do a white and a brown, but
Yeah.
whereas in a black and white,
Right.
it's just shades of black, right?
Correct. Okay, so this takes care of our pencil sketching. Now,
This is
You
as
can-
best as I could come up with.
okay, let's see.
Mama.
No, this is good. So I would say um, the lines right now are they're a little hesitant because you seem to be making
yeah.
lines in the same place back and forth.
Hmm.
That is what I see. But just share it on the group later so I can take a closer look.
Okay.
All right. Now the next tree we will make will be the mango tree. So again, I want you to just see how I'm doing it. I'm drawing, I have to proportion it first. And if this is the size that I have, the mango tree is this is it. And I'll show you how that proportioning is done, like we do almost everything else also. So if we take this as the square in which we have to fit the tree, and we divide this in half and half. So your trunk comes down to just about 1/4, right? And well, not even that far. Let's say this as the tree only, not too much. So, and the trunk is not even absolutely in the center. Even that matters. It's still about 3/4. And if you were to position it, it is somewhere in this region. So just a little left of center. And then you can see how the shape of the canopy is almost like a sloping downward C curve on the left, and then an almost inverted S curve on the right. Okay. Plus the texture on the leaves is like a downward texture. So that's important as well. So if this is our box, imagine this as the box. You can make a C shape, but don't really just make it like a circle. This is a C shape, and then like a little S, inverted S shape. That's our canopy. And if this is divided into 3 parts, then about 1/3 of this distance of the canopy, we have the trunk below. And this is a very complicated looking trunk. It's like 2 trees have twirled around themselves. Now here as well, you can add a texture lines. So
Mira, let Anita finish her work. No, she'll get very late. The 3 of you play.
So our the lines on the tree need to be pointing downward. See the clumps of the mango plant, they're long leaves that all point downward like that. So here if we make a line that is pointing upward, it might look a little odd. There will be some leaves that point upward, but largely they are heavy leaves pointing downward. So using this kind of a texture, you demarcate areas which you want to leave light, and against that, you will put a dark shadow. Texturing of trees also is another thing. You can spend a lot of time in learning to texture trees. And don't worry about your original shaped lines, huh? Because as you can tell, when you paint, everything gets covered. Now, this time I want you to try and use both these. So, in some places, if you feel green is appropriate, use green. And in other places, you can use a mixture of colors and try to mix your own shades in the palette. But avoid making a tree with just one color. So, this is how I'm adding. Watercolor is not about painting the tree in accurately as a tree as much as evoking a certain sentiment. So mangoes generally evoke a feel of heat and tropicalness. So we need that kind of vibrancy. That is the purpose. So I'm using a mix of greens and blues to create a shade that is vibrant. Mango trees usually have a much deeper green shade, but don't be limited by nature. And some places let the painting be light or non-existent. Just leave white patches in some places, that's also fine. You can use your brush to change the edge. Just pull out a few lines, make a few extra dots, lines to indicate leaves. And this time again, I'm going to use orange and a little bit of yellow ochre. Pull down the branching. And where I have that highlight, I'm not even painting it. Now here it's very wet. As much as I would like to put in some color, it's too wet right now. So I'm going to let it dry and then I'm going to add color. So these things are very happy accidents when some color runs into another part of your painting. Don't try to correct it. This is the joy of watercolor. All this magic that happens. So make sure your brush is lightly moving across the paper. If you are using a very heavy hand, then how can I advise you? Then try not touching the paper, your hand to the paper when you're painting. That might make it very heavy. But hold it aloft like this. and then try painting it, because then you only make contact in a few places, as opposed to this where it'll almost be like a writing stroke. And here now, to make the shadow, I'm going to use just a cobalt blue and make horizontal lines right up to the base of the tree. This is again orange and yellow ochre, and I'm adding a little bit of scarlet here. If it comes, scarlet is refusing. So using these different kinds of colors makes your painting a lot more vibrant. And a vibrant watercolor painting is what is desired. So if anyone says, "Arey, but your tree, how can a tree be red?" or something like that, if anyone dares to say that by now, you can just tell them, okay, if you want it to look exactly like that tree, click a picture. How is everyone's wet on wet going? I'm a little concerned about your water puddles.
I don't know. See.
Let me see.
What do you think?
If you can hold it up, you're probably not making big lakes here. Yeah. Nice, nice. This is good. This is good. So as of now, what's happening, Paru, is that your brush is moving regularly. So it's moving at 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, thoda idhar, thoda udhar. So we want to avoid that automatic, almost like an auto setting on the hand, that you make 2, 3 here, 2, 3 here, 2, 3 here, like that. What you need to do is, in some places, sweep the brush, in some places make leaves, some then move to another side and just press the brush down. So the brush moves in a very dynamic fashion. That is the practice. But that again comes only with practice, and only
That comes with time.
yeah, and only after you've done a certain amount of trees, you'll say, okay, maybe this part of the tree I got right. And how did I get it right? Okay, I did so and so thing.
Trees have always been a challenge. This is the first time I'm painting trees after a very, very long. I don't think I've really. I think by far this is the most successful tree I've ever painted.
Wonderful, then that's excellent. So
I've
also,
always wanted to learn to paint trees, but it's always been a struggle. So
you won't believe, even me, till a few years ago, I also struggled with making trees. And then so for me, it came quite organically how to learn this, because I started looking at videos on how to paint trees, but more from analyzing them for myself, about what I'm doing differently versus what that artist is doing. And I realized that I didn't come to watercolor as naturally as pencil sketching. So in pencil sketching, I can tell you there's a certain discipline you follow and how you create textures. With watercolor, it's even more subtle. So you get to how to wield the brush, and also how to manipulate it to create different shapes. Like while I'm doing this with a big fat brush, as you can see, I'm painting it with a certain intent, so that the edge of the brush is creating my texture, and also cordoning off areas where I want it to be dark, and giving me the shape of the leaves in clumps, not like individual trees, leaves, right? So this is something that I realized only after using the brush that, okay, this is possible.
Watercolor is also more, I feel personally, it's a little more forgiving medium.
You think so?
As in,
You're one of the rare people who might be thinking.
I feel if you're not looking to create something super realistic,
Yeah,
you can get away with a lot.
you can. That is also true. Also,
And in
another-
layering also,
Huh,
you can get away with a lot.
yes,
That has been my experience.
correct. You're absolutely right. So another thing I wanted to ask all of you is, are you looking at the reference image when you're painting? Because you think that you see what you see, and then you start painting and you shut your reference image off. And then whatever coloring you do is whatever your brain retains. Like I said, like I said, often it gives you very, very little information about what actually is happening. And I noticed this only in the live class that I took on Saturday. We did trees again. And most of the students, there are 4 students, two of the students were not looking at their reference image when they were painting. So their trees became green trees, yes. But if I were to ask them, okay, which of the reference images have you used as inspiration? They also weren't able to tell, because they had gone and painted something that their brain was telling them to paint. Yeah.
I look at the reference image, but at the end I look at my tree and it doesn't look like that. Despite looking at the reference image. So at some point I give up.
No, you can see where it has gone wrong. The things to watch out for are overall shape and proportion, the silhouette.
Light and shade.
I should just write this down. These are the important things. So not individually, it doesn't need to look exactly like the tree, but the important parts are shape, the silhouette,
Light and shade.
not so much.
At least where the light source is coming from.
Not really.
Or
No.
does it matter?
No, it doesn't. Proportion is important. And to some extent also color, but not as detailed. So if I were to paint this even a blue tree, if I paint it in the right manner, it will still look like a mango tree if I get the proportions and the silhouette. All right. Now, the other problem area, since we have 10 more minutes since I started late, is the ever torturous coconut palm. So my personal experience with coconut palms has been very traumatic. No matter what I did, I could never make the palm look very elegant, because I was so obsessed with making each and every line of those fronds that I felt unless I do that, my palm is not going to look like a coconut palm. And therein lay the mistake, because it's not about each and every leaf being drawn accurately. It's about creating a sense of a coconut palm. That's all. So in this case, again, I have to just follow a more or less shape of each of the fronds, the silhouette of the tree, and then make a few lines to indicate that this is a palm. So I want to show you how this is also drawn. I'm going to magnify just the head, because the trunk is not a big issue. This is the trunk of the coconut palm.
Aditi, can I ask you one thing about the colors?
Yeah.
Is there a sequence to, I mean, I know you go from light to dark, but the list of colors you've given, do we have to, I mean, when we are dabbing color, should it be in somewhat like this sequence that you have given?
No, so we did yellow first
like,
and then the blues.
yeah,
Then we did these
yes,
because
yes,
yes, while sequence matters, the lighter colors are
right,
just there to easily absorb or accept the darker colors, right? So that's why
yeah,
the
yeah,
light
yeah,
layer in the beginning makes sense. When you
okay,
overlay a dark shade with a light shade, it changes the hue just a little bit, yes, but does not
okay,
dramatically
okay,
cause any difference. So it's always better to start with lighter shades or lighter washes of darker colors and then deepen them
okay,
with deeper, a more concentrated color.
okay,
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 all right.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, now for the coconut palm, I am going to create the silhouette. So just a very scraggly line to create the silhouette. So this is where that whole pencil sketching thing comes in handy. With even just so much drawn, you can tell that this is not a mango tree. This is definitely a palm tree. Now, whether it is a coconut palm or supari and all, we don't want to get into that. But at least it's a palm tree. That's what we need. So for painting this, I pretty much use the same colors. So I'll start off with yellow. But one thing that I do different in this is the brush manipulation. So I want you to see this. You start off with a thin line. This is often used in calligraphy or brush lettering. You start with just the tip, then press the brush and then pick it up. So I'm going to make it this dark on one side like this. So it's a thin line, press, and then pull down. So in one stroke, it creates the sense of the palm front. Start thin, press, and then pull down. The advantage of this is that you cover a lot of ground in one shot. And here, how would I do this? Yeah. And you don't have to do it all over, but some of the major sections can be covered like that. And then at the ends, you can make a few lines that follow the order that we see. Again, now you'll see that this is fairly light. And I will add a deeper shade as a second layer, only in a few areas. And the same blue-gray color for the trunk is fine. Now here I'm also adding green for a change, for more contrast and more drama. Okay. Okay, how's it going? Any questions? Any difficulties?
Okay, yours is more stylized than mine. Mine is still.
Okay, let's have a look. Yeah, so I want to check, Paru, did you press the brush enough for this?
Yeah, I did, but I think my brush was thinner, or
Hmm,
maybe I didn't press it enough. The stroke was not as broad as
Yeah.
yours.
right.
That's why mine is coming a little thinner.
That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
So it's this is something that you can just practice on a regular basis also.
Yeah.
Where this is how you have to create that stroke. You have to
Yeah,
press it down and then pull it up. Some
Pull it up.
places it goes straight down. Let me just show you a variety of these. Okay, so here are the various shapes that you can make with this brush. Now make sure that your brush has a nice point like that, not a very stubby brush.
Hmm.
And then I'm just taking a mix of whatever colors I have in my palette. So it's not going to be green, but don't load your brush too much. And see, these are the strokes that you can do. You can pull your thin line out and then press the brush and pull it up. So you get a very interesting teardrop-like shape.
Hmm.
You can then pull it and extend it. So you get that like this leaf shape.
Hmm.
And then you can turn it and pull it so you get a more bent shape like that. You can turn it in the other direction as well, but you have to do it slowly and cautiously. So
Yeah,
once,
and practice. I'm that when
Yeah.
the tip, the last bit, I'm losing control
yeah.
of the brush.
So
I'm okay. When it comes to the end.
try this exercise where you can make a simple line like that and start with making just these leaves,
Right.
manipulating them to go all up on the top and slowly increasing them in size and then bringing them down. So they start looking like another kind of palm. Now here, I was taking them upward.
Hmm.
But if you turn this around, you can also practice this coming down. And this often can, the difference in the angle can also be good or bad. You know that you are good at one direction works well for you. But that doesn't mean that you only do that. You can practice the other. But the fact is that the stroke going up and the stroke going different are two different skills. So you may find that you are better at one than the other.
It just looks so pretty.
This in itself is a very nice exercise, one full page.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely practice on it for sure.
Cool. Okay. Right. So now you have several trees that I've shared with you. Let's see, Amulya.
So it's a bit patchy towards one side.
Huh. This is, I
And
think, a water issue, Amulya. So towards your left side, it's one big patch of blue-green. That's probably because there was a little more water than necessary. So all that pigment has just danced around and settled wherever it could manage without much control. But on the right side, you have some, maybe the paint just dried enough in time so that you could get that little color distinction. So I think this is still pretty good, but you can add more layers. You can add more layers. And between the trunk and the canopy, there's a distinct mark. So that is probably because you're afraid of one color going into the other. So don't worry about that. Let it flow, because that looks better than having this very strict distinction between the canopy and the trunk. All right, cool. Okay, how about everyone else? You are comfortable?
Yeah. Good, very good. Thank you.
Okay. So now what I can suggest is make either A5 or A6 size sheets. And in that, draw at least 5 or 6 trees. And using a nice, maybe an invisible tape or something, tape them somewhere. So see how it looks. So a version of, say, this, for example, some are in pencil, some are in watercolor. So you see shapes and you see colors, and you could maybe write the name of the tree also. If you are going to do just a pencil sketch series, then you could look for trees which have very dramatic trunks. Like you have banyan has a very dramatic trunk. The strangler fig has a dramatic trunk. So there are lots of these large trees. Even Gulmohar has a dramatic trunk. So those can be very good subjects for pencil sketching of just the trunk part. And for trees, you can choose between tropical trees, temperate trees, and then make a series of that and try to put that up. Okay. All right. So now next week, we are jumping into animals. We'll be drawing furry animals of some kind. And hopefully we can do at least one, either dog or cat or rabbit or something like that next week. So if you have any preference, please let me know. Then maybe we can all do that. Okay? All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So I'll catch you next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Aditi.
thank you.
Bye.